Welcome. Hello, I'm Creflo, and welcome to your world. Now, today's youth are too often brought up in an environment that forces them to survive by any means necessary, even if it means giving their life and soul to the streets. Survival mode has become a way of life. Born into an environment of turmoil and distress, they can feel stuck, trapped, and unable to break free from a predetermined future of life in the streets. A future that will continue their cycle of violence, jail, and eventually death at the hands of the streets. My guest today will share with us her own experience on the streets, from the incarceration of two of her own children to witnessing firsthand the death of another. Bring us on that journey with your three sons and how you saw your past being played out in the next generation.
They started partaking in a lot of different activities, gang activities and smoking and hanging out. They got themselves in a situation where one is doing 17 years and one is doing life and one is deceased.
What you're about to hear may be upsetting as we uncover the dangers all of our children are facing today, right here on Your World.
Changing one life, time after time. Oh Lord, we do it all for you.
Through the trials I see, I'll always believe a new life starts with me. Oh,
Change your world today. Change is gonna come your way. Change and get an understanding. His grace will transform you.
My guest today is here to tell us about the fast life in the streets that she's experienced as a young adult. Now, despite her efforts to protect her family from the same fate that she's been through, the worst thing a parent can imagine, listen to this, witnessing the death of her child from gang violence. Man. Now, she lives in constant fear that her younger children will choose the street life. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Portia Summers to Your World. Portia, you have a pretty fascinating story. We want you to allow us to come into your world. We would like to take a journey with you today because I believe what you're going to share will provide information to our viewers. It will provide information to parents. And in some cases, it will encourage and inspire others when they hear your story. So let's start with you. Take us back to when you were in the streets and how your life was impacted because of the streets. And then bring us into this place where you found yourself in Georgia and your children.
I'm from Florida and I chose the streets. I wasn't forced in the streets.
So your family life was okay, but you chose the street anyway?
I did. I wanted to be on the west side of the tracks versus the east side.
And why is that?
It was fascinating. At home, it was just boring and, nothing to do but play on the streets. And when we used to visit our aunt's house, which was in the projects, I was like, man, they do everything over here. So when I got older, in my teen years, that's where I started hanging out at.
So what was it that was so enticing about the streets that you would choose it over a pretty decent family life? And explain to us, when we talk about the streets, what were some of the things that were happening in the streets?
A lot of drug selling, getting money. Just seeing a lot of people who, my family, just making a lot of money. Versus at home, I have to wait to ask my mom, ask my dad, wait till I do this, pay a bill. But when I get on the other side of town, it's like money, 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 money to just do whatever you want with it.
So at the beginning, Was it fulfilling for you to get money this way, and how long did that last?
It was quite fulfilling because a person I used to run with was like, you know, you can manipulate a lot of people because you have the look, you have the, you know, people won't suspect you of just doing anything, so you can get away with a lot. And so when I tried it, I was like, wow, I really can. It went from one extreme to another till, you know, that little bit just wasn't enough.
So you and I both know that for every action that we choose to participate in, there are going to be some consequences.
Yeah.
Tell us about the consequences that you ran into as a result of your actions.
One in particular that I really still think about even to this day was one of my friends. We were really close. We were just out one night and we went to get something to eat after the club, and he knew something was about to happen. And he had kissed me on my cheek. He was like, I love you, sis. I love you. I said, I love you too. And next thing I know, these guys are coming across the street and he tells us to pull off. And all we could see was the young man just pumping him full of holes. Just shot him a good 5 to 10 times.
Right in front of you? Mm-hmm. So how did that affect you emotionally?
To be honest with you, it affected me for the moment. But when I chose the streets, that was part of, you know, this is what comes with it. That's what happens in the street. So it became the norm, you know, a lot of people, including, you know, my children's fathers.
And so you found yourself being hardened by the streets?
Right.
And emotionally the same thing began to happen?
Yeah.
Okay, so what was the turning point as a result of these consequences that would happen to you, and how close did you get to death yourself?
At a club, a shootout breaks out, and we take cover and we made it out. And I feel this heat on my chest. I'm like, man, what is this heat? And the shell casing is literally still smoking on my shoulder, right here, on my shoulder, while a young man is laying down, dead. And so the shell casing sat on my shoulder and hit him. And to be honest with you, that still wasn't a wake-up call. The turning point was on one of my children who's incarcerated. On his birthday, a very, very, very good friend of mine that I had wanted to introduce, who's now my husband, to this young man. And we were getting ready to go out of town. And I called him and he was like, you know, come through, I want to meet him. And right before we got there, literally before we got there, someone had killed him and he was laying on the ground. And this was somebody that I looked at, you know, like a brother that was telling me, you know, he had did fed time, got out, and was still doing the same thing. And he was one of those ones, you know, this is just not for you, P. It's not. And we pulled up in the complex and there he was laying on the ground. At that point, I started to get scared. It was just different from the other crimes that I've seen, that I've committed. That moment was just different.
It would be interesting to know, and I'm sure our audience may want to know this as well. Was there any type of intervention, godly intervention? Maybe you received it or didn't, but did you see some type of godly intervention come in your life in the middle of all of this?
I did. You know, every night I would always see a clouded, just a picture, but there was never a clear picture of it. It was never clear for years. I mean, a very long time, up until when I started feeling pain for all the stuff that I've seen and I've done. It was this guy who my husband met, and our son who was killed. They went to church one day and came home and said they got saved. I was like, what? I said, okay, respect my space and I'll respect y'all's space. And this man, this pastor literally came to the hood almost every week. Portia, I just want to say hi. And it was amazing how and he was Caucasian and he came to the hood. It didn't bother him. He kept coming. I'm like, what does this man want? And I didn't know the motive then. Until he took us out to dinner one night, and he explained to me who God is. And I was like, wow. I was like, but I thought God don't forgive people like me, you know? And so I gave him a little description. He was like, no, that's not who God is. And so in the middle of dinner, I received Christ right in the restaurant.
That's powerful.
And that vision, that blurred picture I kept seeing I saw it so clearly, and it was my mom in a corner praying. Every night, God showed me every night I saw this.
You know, that's the grace of God.
Yeah.
It's that unmerited, undeserved favor that even when we don't deserve it, God is doing stuff for us. He's ministering to people to do things for us. A lot of times, folks just don't know what's going on. You wonder, it could have been you on the other side of those bullets. It could have been you that was shot down. It could have been you that was dead. But because of the prayers of the righteous, those prayers availed a lot. And here you sit today. I mean, that's a very, very encouraging story, because you know somehow, somewhere in the situation that God had to be involved. And a lot of times people have no idea, they don't have a clue how they got out of a situation, but it was God. It's always been God.
Yes.
And it'll always be God, you know?
Yes.
So, I don't know about our audience, but I'm sure you guys can recall things in your life that happened. You try to figure out, how did I get out of it? It was God. The Bible talks about that He perfects those things that concerns us.
Yes.
And then the enemy gets upset now, because now your husband's born again. You said your son got born again.
Yes.
You got born again. So now his job is to try to come in and try to change your mind about this and wonder and doubt, do you want to serve this God? So you moved to Georgia. Bring us on that journey with your 3 sons, and how, in a sense, you saw your past being played out in the next generation. Talk about that.
We moved up here for change, for growth, because the pastor was like, you know, if you all really want to grow, you need to leave or you'll die, meaning on the inside, on the out. So we were on a computer one day and we just saw we saw Union City. And so we was like, what is Union City? And so my husband was like, well, let's go up there and see. So we went and we liked it. So we literally came back, packed up, and we left. The boys just didn't want to accept, and I hate we're here. I don't see us staying here. So they started partaking in a lot of different activities, gang activities and smoking and hanging out. And as a result, they got themselves in a situation where one is doing 17 years and one is doing life and one is deceased.
What happened with the one that's deceased?
He got into a fight with a young man one day. It was an argument over a phone, and the young man stabbed him to death.
Now, I can't imagine the emotions you were dealing with, but in the midst of one doing, 17 years in prison, one life in prison, and a son that's dead, at any time did you have to go through the guilt and condemnation of saying, somehow blaming yourself for what happened?
Of course, absolutely. Because I chose that life. And I could have chosen the life. My sister's in education, my mom in nursing, and, my dad's, I chose that life. And it reflected, on them, unfortunately, because they were so used to hearing the stories, your mom this, your mom did this, your mom was, this and that. And I personally think that they really wanted to be that individual as well. Because
you were kind of like royalty in the street.
I was.
I mean, you were connected with the right people to traffic the right type of drugs, to famous people, well-known people.
Yes.
And of course, they were alive to hear and to know that. How did you begin to really process going through and dealing with the condemnation and the guilt, especially after your son died?
Well, I had to get on my face.
Yeah.
Lord, I know you love me. I know. This is something I know. I don't need nobody to tell me that. And when he showed me how much he really does love me, he started to show me This is what I'm going to use for you to help others. So many people are going to need to hear your story to know that I am the only strength. And it took for me to see it that way, and the pain started subsiding. The pain was like, okay. And the more I accepted it that way, the more I was able to help.
Young black men are under attack.
Yes.
Literally under attack to the death. And it's going to require a team of people who have been there, who've lived the life that they think they want to live. But really what encourages me and what just really brings me great joy is to finally hear people like yourself and others who are now declaring, yeah, we can do some things, but at the end of the day, the only help that can really bring you all the way out is the same one that brought me out.
Yes.
And do you find yourself interceding now for these young men as you saw your mother interceding for you?
Yes, absolutely.
I believe you've been put in this position to share your testimony, to intercede, to share your hugs and your encouragement. To me, you appear to be this meek, wise woman who has obtained an understanding of life that can be shared with people to help them to preserve their lives. This is emotional for you. Why? Every time you deal with somebody else's situation, every time you deal with somebody else's kids, the motivation behind it, being your own kids, kind of come up, huh?
Yeah, because I didn't know how to parent. I was just having children. I was just having children, and just when you think you're that parent, you're really not. And there have been countless times, I know my son didn't do that, but deep down I know that he did. To parents, know who your children really are by spending time, asking questions, the hard questions, being honest with them.
Yeah. This is something that you've learned firsthand.
Yes.
You're saying you still have kids there with you, and now they're benefiting from what you've learned. But you're saying as a result of the tragedy and the being in jail, you're advising parents to understand what it means and what it's going to cost to parent successfully children that are tempted to go into the street. And you're saying to me, and I've heard this over and over again, that valuing your kids and spending time with your kids and talking to your kids and loving them and hugging them and all that stuff, you're saying that makes a difference?
It really does.
Yeah.
It really and truly does.
But you've learned.
Yes.
And now with those lessons, God is using you to help to share those lessons with people who were just like you were.
Yes.
And now you're giving them hope, inspiring them, and giving some understanding that you don't have the same situation happen in your life that happened in my life. What are some things you're doing differently now, and maybe even some concerns? I think you have 3 kids now?
At home.
At home. How are you dealing with that now as a result of all of this?
The youngest is 3. And our 11-year-old, she's the type, she knows who God is, so her thing is, God, I know God can make everything right, no matter what it looks like. Mm-hmm. Versus our son, he's curious, very curious. So sometimes he stumbles, but he knows how to look at it and still say, I know it's not right, but I wonder if I look this up on my phone, will I get caught? Mm-hmm. Versus our daughter, the fear of so much can happen. I can wind up like this, I can wind up like that, I can wind up dead. She looks at all of that and immediately says no. Yeah. To have that joy of knowing, I strongly can say training a child up. Now I can say that with victory. Training that stuff works, man.
Well, I think the thing that we're understanding about it is we train up a child in the way they should go, and when they are old, they won't depart from it. But the Bible doesn't say anything about what happens in between.
Right.
There's some things that happen
Yeah.
in between.
Yeah.
And you don't want to beat them down and condemn them and shame them as a result of what they're doing. You can just be assured that that word, like a seed, it's growing.
Yes.
It's maturing. And one day you'll look up and you'll say, wow, look at what the word has done.
Yes.
But you're not only training the 3 you have at home, you're training all those boys
Yes.
at the Levels program.
Yes.
That when they see you, probably without a doubt, they see a mom, they see
Yeah.
an authority. It's a blessing of the Lord. And I am so glad that you decided to stop by and take this journey with us, because to look at you, it really is a miracle. You could be depressed, full of shame, full of doubt, not knowing who you are, addicted to some type of drugs or alcohol, but here you are sitting up like an intercessor, like you're about ready to lay your hands on my forehead and pray for me, and you give us hope.
Yes. Absolutely.
You give us hope that no matter how bad a situation is, that if you can allow your life to be directed in the right place, and that's where God is concerned. You see, ladies and gentlemen, we're coming down to a very serious point, and it is this, that everything you can try in this world, that when it fails you, you'll see Jesus and he will never let you down. And I love it when you can get a story and Jesus becomes the center of that story. And I can just see in your life that he is the very foundation
Yes.
of your family. This is how you
Absolutely.
guys make it.
Yes.
He is your great hope.
Yes.
He is the one that you depend on, and he's the one that perfects everything that concerns you. I'm encouraged today. Thank you so much for what you've shared with us today. Don't you appreciate Portia? I'd like to share this with you. This is a grace certificate, and I made it out to Portia Summers, and it says, I believe the love that God has for me. I believe that grace in the person of Jesus Christ has already provided everything I'll ever need. I believe everything in my past is in my past. I daily proclaim I'm the righteousness of God. I'll daily live by the beliefs of understanding, grace, empowering, and change. And I will daily flood my life with the Word of God. And just to commemorate our time together, I've signed it, and I'd like for you to sign this. And it's right above the righteousness of God, because that's exactly who you are. And that's yours. That was awesome. You know, fear is real. As emotions go, it has the power to haunt you and to keep you from moving forward in life. It blinds you, preventing you from living a life of grace. But God never intended for you to live like that. It has always been His intention for you to live a happy and a successful life. You know, the Bible says, fear not, for I am with you. Portia is a perfect example of this scripture. God kept His hand on her, and He has His hands on you and your situation as well. I put together some very special resources to help you build your faith in the one who covers and protects. My announcer has the details. Watch this.
We've all seen or heard stories about young people making a personal decision to join a gang, be part of a robbing crew, or abuse drugs or alcohol. The results of those actions may not manifest themselves immediately, but continuing down that path has severe results. Those involved in the street life could face severe injury, jail time, and even death. And these consequences are not just limited to the youth, but also affect the family members of gang-involved youth. For those who are at risk of being pulled into this dark and deadly lifestyle, the fear can be overwhelming. How can they stay out of the streets? What if there's no avoiding this future? Today's guest shared a powerful and very real testimony on how she left the street life behind as a young mother, but was unable to save her children from the same fate. She has experienced great loss in her life, but she overcame her fears by the grace of God. God has allowed her to succeed in life because she refuses to live in fear. At one time or another, every one of us has had to deal with fear in some form. Fortunately, we have God's promises to protect and deliver us when we're the most frightened. Creflo Dollar has made it his mission to help those who are living in fear to break the chains for good and break through to a life free from worry and stress. In his 2-CD series, Never Be Afraid Again, Creflo reveals how believing what Jesus says about our identity removes fear for our lives and allows us to discover real transformation. And in the best-selling book, Overcoming Fear, you will learn how to eliminate any type of fear imaginable from your life, solidifying your stance in a life of faith. With a love gift of $45 toward the work of Creflo Dollar Ministries, you can begin your change today. Call now to receive the CD series and the book. Creflo Dollar will also include a copy of today's show to inspire you to take charge of your life and uplift you. God is waiting for you to give it all to Him so you can no longer live in fear and progress in life. Call now.
Listen, if there's something going on in your world today and you need help, or if you know someone who does, please reach out and connect with us online for more information about what can be done to move your life from fear to faith. I want you to stay connected with me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and know that I'd love to hear your story. I'll see you next time right here on Your World.
Join women from all over the world to gain knowledge and insight on biblical equality, gender roles and relationships, leadership, and business. Experience 3 days of refreshing your heart, soul, and mind at the 2018 Women's Conference, Radical Revolution. Receive transformative messages by Taffy Dollar.
We're going hard after God with everything that we have, so the body of Christ can come to its fullest potential, so we can do what God has called us to do.
Lisa Bevere.
You are created for something more than you have ever seen with your natural eyes. There is something inside of you that says there is something more.
Sarah Jakes Roberts.
And that's one of the things that we have to master as women, because it's so often we feel like if our voice isn't heard in the moment, then it won't be heard at all. So we use our words as weapons when they could be tools that build other people up.
And a riveting performance from Tasha Cobbs and the World Changers Church International Praise Team. Come on, you know this is going to be an amazing experience. Spaces are limited. Register today. The Radical Revolution Women's Conference takes place March 15th through 17th. You don't want to miss out.
Thank you, partners and friends. Your love and financial support makes it possible to bring this message into millions of homes all across the globe.